Alright, so we're going to just do a little review here. And I'm going to, first thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through on how many problems and what kind of problems and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so write this down. You should write this down in your notes. So 1 through 5 are the conversion problems. You know what I'm talking about there? So we have to convert from centimeters to meters and quarts to gallons and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there's 5 of those type of problems. Yes.
So is it like the first part? Because it was like
It could be. It's a combination.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a combination between the first 2 sections. Okay. And then let's see. I'm sorry, I said 5. It's 4. It's only 4. And then 5 through 6, numbers 5 through 6, are the evaluate. I'll just write that word down. Evaluate. Do you remember what problems those are? It says, evaluate 3x plus 2y if x is equal to 3 and y is equal to 7 and that kind of thing. So it's plug and chug, right? You take those numbers and you plug them in. Okay? 7 and 8 are solve the equation. And that's right, to solve for x. Okay, it's an equation, which means there's what kind of a sign there? Solve an equal sign, right? All right, so it's solve the equation. All right, and then 9 and 10 is solve the inequality. What do I mean by an inequality? Give me some words that describe that.
Less than.
Yeah, less than, equal to, greater than, equal to. And what's the only thing different about the inequality compared to the equation problem? Well, yeah, an equal and an inequality, but as far as solving the problem itself, there's one thing you do on an inequality. What is it, Trey?
When you multiply by a negative number.
It is.
Flip the sign.
Yep. So when you multiply or divide by a negative number, remember that? That's when you change the direction of the inequality. That's really the only difference between the inequality and the equation. All right? So you would just, if you don't multiply or divide by a negative, you just do everything the way it's set up. So if it's less than, it stays less than. If it's greater than, it stays greater than. But the time that you multiply or divide by a negative, you change the inequality. So if it was less than and you divide by a negative, then it becomes what? Greater than. All right, so that's the only difference there. All right, 11 and 12, you're going to graph. And they're basically, I'll just say this, graph points. Pretty simple. Number 11 is like way easy. It's just one point, and you graph that point, and you have to label it. All right, and I will actually put little graphs on the answer sheet for you. Okay. Yes. There's nothing that's already graphed for you. Right. I did not put a graph on there, so there's nothing that's already graphed. But on 11, you just graph a point. On 12, do you remember that? Remember that one homework problem where it said like graph the quadrilateral? And it was like 4 sides, and you had to connect them. That's what number 12 is like. Okay, it's not necessarily a quadrilateral, but number 11, you're just graphing one point. Very, very simple. But you have to label it. It says label it as well. And then 12, you're actually graphing a polygon, which means a shape. Okay, and then you have to connect and make straight lines out of it. Okay, and I'll give you graphs on the answer sheet. I'll give you a little graph thing. You don't have to use graph paper or anything else. Okay. All right, now, 13 to 15, 13, 14, 15, you're going to graph again, but you're going to graph a linear equation. So what does your graph look like here? A line, that's right. It's just a line. This is that y equals mx plus b. All right, so what you're going to have to do, 1's already, I'll tell you right now, 13 is already in y equals mx plus b form. All right, so you don't have to really do anything. Number 14, you're going to have to solve for y. We've done that before. You're going to actually have to solve for y and put it in y equals mx plus b form. Right? Wow, that sound is super high. Let me turn it down. All right. And then 15, it's one of those either vertical or horizontal. Do you remember us talking about that? Yeah. If it was a horizontal line, what's the graph of a horizontal line look like? What's it start off with? What's the equation of a horizontal line? It's y equals than just a number, and nobody's remembering that. You're going to have to look at that, okay? We talked about that in class, actually, the other day. We did a big thing on the board with that, okay? It's on the lesson, too. It's on the video. You can always go back and review some of those videos. You don't have to sit there and watch every minute of it, all right? But scan through to the part that you didn't understand or you don't remember, okay, and watch that. Make sure you do that. And we'll go over those here in a sec. Yep, so that's all of that. Then, 16 through 18. This is solving a system of equations. Solve a system of equations. Somebody give me a word that describes what we're doing there. That's a weird cue. Anyway, equation. All right. Solve systems of equations. Which means what? Give me some words that we say. A system of equations. Substitution. What's the other word? Elimination. Now, I do not ask you to solve one by graphing. Okay, they had you do that in the homework. I'm not having you do that on the test. So you have to solve by either substitution or elimination. I don't tell you which one you have to use. You can choose which one you want to use. Yeah, preference. You could use either way if you wanted to. Ask about one of those and I'll show you. All right. And then guess what 19 and 20 are? It's the last thing we did. Radicals. Radicals or what? Square roots. It's not necessarily square root. Actually, yep, both of them actually are square roots. So I only give you two of them, and they're not really all that difficult. Okay? They're actually kind of the easier version of the stuff that we've been doing. You don't even have to multiply by a conjugate on this. Okay? I know a lot of you are struggling with that. I'll let you worry about that when you get to Algebra 2. You'll be doing a lot of that in Algebra 2. I just want to kind of introduce those things to you in here. Yes, sir?
Is there any extra credit?
There's no extra credit. No, the only extra credit I ever give in all my math classes is getting the test signed for 2 points. Okay, so I never give any extra credit at all. Sorry, but that's the way it goes. You can blame my dad for that because my dad's a school teacher for like 36 years or something like that. And I asked him when I first started teaching about extra credit, and he says, well, the only people that need the extra credit are the ones that probably didn't do the work in the first place. So why do they deserve the extra credit? The ones that don't need the extra credit are already doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So they don't really even need the extra credit. So anyway, I kind of like that philosophy, and there we go. All right, let's go through some questions on that. We'll kind of, you know now what's on here. So now let's go through some questions you might have had. Let me flip the page. We'll kind of stick with that practice test thing, or whatever they called it, post-test. Or you could go back to a lesson, I don't care. So let's take a look at it. You should be looking at it right now. You should have stuff in front of you, your book open, your homework open, okay, right in front of you. You should be looking at it, and you should be, if you have a question, let's hit one of those. Let's do a system of equation. If you guys don't have questions, I'll hit some things that I think are important. You can, go ahead. Yep, that's funny. That's exactly what I had my finger right on that. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so let's do 48. So even if you've done this, I want you to pay attention. I want you to look at it. We had a question earlier. How do I know whether to use substitution or elimination? Well, that's a good question. Still got a little conversations going on, okay? I need you to look up here. Question is, how do I know whether to use substitution or elimination? Well, it's your choice. To tell you the truth, on this particular problem, I think either way would be just as easy. If it was me, I would probably tell you the truth. I'd probably use elimination on this if it was me, because I'm looking at something. I'm looking at this minus 2m and I'm looking at this plus m. And really, all I have to do is multiply the top by a 2. And then that's going to be a 2m, isn't it? And then, well, if I multiply the top by a 2, won't that be 2 times m? And then the 2m and the minus 2m will cancel out, won't they? They'll eliminate. You could do eliminate, or you could do substitution. You could take that m and get that m by itself. So if you did that, you would get m equals negative 2r plus 11. Then you would take this and do what to it? substitute it in for this. You could do it that way, and there wouldn't be anything wrong with that. And some of you guys would rather do substitution than elimination. But I'm going to do this by elimination. So what I'm going to have to do is I have to multiply everything by 2. All right? I have to multiply everything by 2, not just the m. Right? Because remember what math, what you do in algebra, whatever you do what? On one side, you have to do on the other side. So what do I get here? Oops, not 2. What do you get if you distribute that 2 through there? You get 4r plus 2m. That 2m is the whole reason I multiplied everything by 2, isn't it? Equals 22. And then the bottom, we didn't do anything to that, did we? And the reason we didn't do anything to it is because I always go slanted like that. There we go. Look what happens here. This cancels out, doesn't it? So look, this adds up to 0. I'm adding up all my columns. Do you see that? Yeah, I'm adding up all the columns. Now, some teachers and some books say, well, you can subtract. If they were both positive, you could subtract. But I like to just be consistent, have one positive, had one negative, and then add all my columns together. All right? Then I'm doing it the same way. I don't have to worry about, do I add this time, do I subtract this time? I always add. All right? So what do you get here? You get 10r. That's a 0. You add those, you get 20. See how easy this is now? Divide both sides by 10, and r is what? 2. So that's r. But you're not finished, though, are you? Because you got to find 2 things. There's 2 variables. There's 2 equations, so we find those 2 variables. Now we have to solve for m, don't we? Now, I can take that r, and I could put it either in for this r, solve for this m, or I could put it in for this r and solve for this m right here. Which one do you think would be easier, the top one or the bottom one? I say the top one would be a little bit easier because m is already sitting there by itself, right? So let's do this. It's 2 times r, which is 2, right, plus m equals 11. So let's do this. That's a 4. We don't need to write 4 down, do we? I know it's a 4, so I subtract 4 from both sides, and what's m? That would be 7, and there's my answer. M is 7 and r is 2.
Well, how do you know which one's X and Y? Right?
When they're different letters, don't worry about it. Just circle them both. If it's X and Y, they kind of want you to put it into a ordered pair. But if it's letters, just circle them, and that's fine. Make sense? So that would be one of the substitution or elimination ones. Let me give you a problem. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I had some confusion about 49.
49. Okay. All right. Yeah, because I can see that. Can probably see what you're confused about. Let's go blue on this one. So we're doing 49. So 2x plus 4y equals 6. And then 7x equals 4 plus 3y. Now this does look a little different, doesn't it? Like right here, look. All the letters, do you see this? All the letters are on the left-hand side, and just the number by itself was on the right-hand side. So they set that up really nice and pretty for you. On this one, not quite so nice. Now the first one's nice, isn't it? You got the x, the y, then the number over here on the right-hand side. So that looks good. Let's just keep that one like that. Is everybody listening? What about this one, though? Let's get the x's, you know, and the y's lining up with each other, okay? So the x is already over here, isn't it? Let's get this y and put it over here. So how do I take that y from the right-hand side and put it on the left-hand side? Subtract. Subtract. That's that whole term. That whole term is being added, isn't it? So you have to look at that whole 3y as just like just one number. It's one term. It's being added, so I subtract it. And what's that equal to? 4. Now that's a lot nicer, isn't it? Okay, because now I got the x's on top of each other, the y's on top of each other, and the numbers on top of each other. Now this one's a little bit more involved than 48 is. So let's take a look at that one. Can I just multiply one of these numbers and get the two numbers to be the same like I did up here? Like right here, all I had to do was multiply that by a 2, and I got these two to be the same. But I couldn't do it to just one of them. Yeah, but it's not going to help you eliminate anything. Right, you're allowed to. Right, you're absolutely right. It is. It's legal to do that. You can multiply the left side and the right side. I still have a little chatting going on. It needs to really stop here. I'm talking to everybody, not just to her because she asked the question. Thanks. I could multiply the left side and the right side by anything I wanted. And is it legal? Absolutely. Is it going to help you solve the problem? Maybe not. All right. So I want to do it this way. Since one's plus and one's negative, let's get rid of the y's. So what number could I get 4 and 3 to become? I want one number that 4 and 3 could become. What would that be? 12. Okay, so let's do this. Let's multiply. How am I going to get that 4 to become a 12? Multiply it by 3. How am I going to take that 3 right there and become a 12? Multiply it by 4. See that? So that way, look, this is going to be a 12 and this is going to be a 12. Then they eliminate, don't they?
Yeah.
You see that? Did that make sense to you?
Yeah.
You could do it with the 2x and the 7x. Okay? There's not just one way to do this. But then you'd have to make one negative, right? And why bother, you know? You could do that, and that's perfectly fine. I just chose the y's because one's already positive, one's already negative. I don't have to worry about the negative, okay? But you're absolutely right. You could eliminate the x's if you wanted to. And try it. You'll get the same exact answer, okay? All right, so let's see what we get when we multiply that out. So I'm going to do this underneath it here. So we distribute the 3 through all of this, right? So what do we get? 6x plus... There's our 12y that we wanted. It's not equal to 6. What's it equal to? 18. Not negative 18. We're just multiplying by a 3. It's a positive 3 through everything. What about this thing right here? What's that going to give you? 28x, right? Minus 12y. There's my y's that are going to eliminate. Equals not just 4, but it's 4 times 4, which is 16. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up all my columns. When I add up all my columns... this and this eliminate. They add up to 0, don't they? So I got rid of the y's. What am I left with? What's that going to be? 34x equals, and that's also 34, isn't it? Yeah, I'm adding them all up. Right, that's what I said up here. You're adding up your columns, right? Because when I add 12 and negative 12, I get a 0 when I add them up. Make sense? So divide by 34, what's x? It's 1. Now, I'm not finished though, am I? Okay, I got to solve for y. Now look, I've got a bunch of equations in here that have y in it and have x in it. I can pick any one of these equations that I want to pick. Which one would you pick? I'd pick the easiest one, wouldn't you? Okay. First one, yeah, it looks like the number's maybe a little smaller. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, does it? Do you want to do that one? Let's do that one. Let's put this x into that one right there. Could I put it into the other one? Absolutely. I get the same exact answer. I just decided to put it into this one. So let's do it. So we just do that in our head. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 4y equals 6. All right, then you do the math. Subtract 2. So 4y is what? 4. Divide by 4, y is 1. So x is 1, y is 1. If you write it as an ordered pair, it'd just be 1, 1. Okay, now I would accept it. If you just circle x equals, y equals, I would accept that. But if you have an x and a y, they want you to write it as an ordered pair. Okay? And that's how you do it. Yes, ma'am.
Right, so if they both use the letters X and Y, you just solve X.
Right, that question was asked earlier, and I answered it already, but I'll answer it again. You just circle both of them. If they don't give you an X and Y, just circle them both and you're good to go. All right? And I don't, I wouldn't mark it wrong if you circle the X and the Y with this, but I probably would give it to you. I give you credit for it, but I'd probably write down this ordered pair just to remind you that if it's an X and a Y, you should write it as an ordered pair. Okay? Yes? Yes, you may. All right, do we have any particular question, any other particular question about this stuff? What about the graphing? They only give you one graphing of an equation, but on the test I give you 3 of them. All right? So you may want to go back and look at the lesson where we did graphing, where there's more examples of that. What'd you say, 51?
Yes.
I tell you what, let's not do any more. I think we've covered the system of equations already. All right? So I think I've given you enough to be able to do the system of equations. So let's not do any more of those. let's do a square root one. How about that? Okay. I'm not going to show you which problem I'm going to give you on the test, but let's just do one that's like the one that's going to be on the test, okay? So I'm looking at number 54. You'll see something that looks similar to number 54. And it'll say simplify, all right? Now look, you could break this down. What's the two obvious things that multiply to be 80?
8 and 16.
8 and 16 is 80. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
I don't think so.
2 and 4.
How about 8 and 10?
Oh, wait.
How about 8 and 10? 8 times 10 is 80. Okay, now watch. Shh, guys. How long does it take? Thank you. Let's take a look at this. Can I take, I broke it down into 8 times 10, but can I take the square root of 8 and come up with a whole number? No. What about 10? No. So let's break those down even further. Can I break down 10 though? Sure I can. It's 4 times what? I said 10, didn't I? I circled 8 and I said 10. Okay, can I break down 8? 4 times 2. Can I break down 10? Right. 5 times 2. Now, I did this for a reason. I put the 2's next to each other for a reason. But look, now, can I take the square root of stuff in here? Absolutely. What's the square root of 4? Where does it go now? Outside, right. And it goes away. It's gone, right? I already took the square root of it. Now, it's a 2 on the outside. Look at this, though. I got a 2 times 2. What's that? That's a 4. What's the square root of 4? So where does that go? On the outside again. What is it? What are these two doing to each other then? They're multiplying together. So this goes. What about the 5? Can I do anything with that? Nope. So where does it stay? Inside the square root. You with me? Now, what do we do with that? Do I just leave it like that? Multiply the 2 and the 2, and I get 4 times the square root of 5. That is simplified. So you'll see one very similar to that on the test. All right? So you're going to have to be able to break it down into its simplest form.
So it's not a purpose where you break it down.
That's correct. All right? All right. Well, I hope that helps a little bit. No, I'm going to collect it tomorrow. I'm going to let you use it one more time to review. Okay? So I'm going to collect it tomorrow and be ready for the test. Review some of the older videos if you need to. All right? So that's it. Watch this tonight if you need the help on it.